Knowledge Nuggets. Reporting defects. What are defects? Merriam-Webster defines a defect as an imperfection that impairs worth or utility, or a lack of something necessary for completeness, adequacy, or perfection. In software development, defects are also known by other names such as bugs, issues, trouble tickets, or reports. What are some of the types of defects that can be found? There could be requirement defects, design defects, code defects, data defects, environment defects, and test defects. Let's take a look at each of these defect types. What are some examples of requirement defects? There could be missing requirements. This could be due to the customer or business analyst not identifying the requirement or not being aware of the need for the requirement. There could be incorrect requirements. The customer may not be aware of how the functionality must work and may identify a requirement that is not valid. There could be requirements that are out of scope for the feature or release. Finally, there could be impacts to the requirement or to a downstream process that are not identified in the requirements. What are some examples of design defects? The design could be based on a misunderstanding of how the customer expects the product to work. The design may not fully cover the requirements. Finally, the design may not identify impacts to the feature or downstream processes. What are some examples of code defects? The new code changes may introduce a defect. Code changes may not fully meet the recommended design. Code changes may not fully meet their requirements. What are some examples of data defects? The data required for the new functionality may not exist, or existing data may conflict with the new functionality. What are some examples of environment defects? Necessary updates to database tables and/or columns may not yet be in place. Screens that limit access to specific user roles, such as an administrator, may not yet be configured to provide access. Any necessary background processes may either not be in place yet or may not be running in the background. Finally, what are some examples of test defects? Test cases may have invalid scenarios. Test cases may have incorrect or missing steps. The test cases may not cover all of the design, or test cases may not cover all of the requirements. These problems may not be captured in a defect, bug, issue, trouble ticket, or report, but the fact that the changes need to be made to the test cases should be captured to account for the time spent and to help prevent repeating similar mistakes in future efforts. What should we do when we find a defect? Report it and assign it to be corrected. This may be done in a tool such as Jira or HP Application Lifecycle Manager. That brings up the next question. Why do we document defects? We need to account for the hours spent on correcting the defects, as this takes time away from other efforts. Also, the documented defects gives us a source of information on mistakes that can be avoided in future efforts. What details should be in a reported defect? The defect should include all details that the assignee will need to investigate and fix the issue. Information that should be included would be the release number for the product in which the defect was found, the name of the product where the defect was found, which module, screen, subsystem, or business area was the defect found in, the name of the reporter of the defect with their contact details, the date and time when the defect was found, a short statement explaining the problem, a short statement explaining the expected results, and most importantly, details on how to recreate the defect. The contents of a defect report could differ depending on your product and project. Who should the defect be assigned to? That depends on the type of defect found. Requirement defects are assigned to the author of the requirements. Typically, this is the business analyst, but it could also be the customer. Design and code defects are assigned to the development team. Data defects would be assigned to a database analyst if one is on the project. Otherwise, they would be assigned to the development team. Environment defects would be assigned to the individual or team responsible for setting up and maintaining the environment where the defect was found. And test defects would be assigned to the appropriate QA analyst or team. Once a defect has been corrected, the assignee would need to verify that it has been corrected and then contact the defect reporter. Typically, this would be done through a tool such as Jira or HP Application Lifecycle Manager, where the defect reports are housed. Once the defect resolution is ready for testing, the reporter of the defect would validate that it has been corrected and then update the defect report accordingly. If the defect has not been corrected, the defect report is assigned back to the assignee. Once the resolution is correct and has been validated by the reporter, the defect report can be closed. After a release has been deployed in production, the project stakeholders can conduct a causal analysis, where the cause of each defect is determined, and lessons learned, where the team identifies what worked, what didn't work, and how they could improve in the future. This will help to avoid repeating the same mistakes on future projects. This has been a Knowledge Nuggets presentation on reporting defects. Thank you for your time and for your attention.